Hello?
They'll never know about the newest issue of the Astonishing X-Men.
No one reads X-Men.
I do because everyone's queer.
Yay!
Yay.
Oh, I'm just trying to make sure that it's... Is that it? Okay, so maybe now it's picking up audio. You two lovelies, please say something.
So in the most recent issue of Astonishing...
Oh dear God. Okay, cool, we got it. It's working.
Issue of Astonishing X-Men.
Cecil, tell us if you can hear us.
Good God. At least we checked it.
So
No.
Area 51 is actually
Oh.
the shed in my backyard.
Where the X-Men live?
Oh, it's where the X-Men live.
The shed in my backyard.
Thanks, Cecil.
Thank you, Cecil. So, heck yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We, as I said earlier, want to reiterate, we all look like we are coming from four very different podcasts.
You're...
So,
But we're all here united by what, Casper?
by coffee.
I was gonna say for the event
For
of
the
today, which is the
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint
For the
Palooza,
PowerPoint Palooza,
which
that's all
happens,
together.
which happens to be sponsored by.
Coffee. Grinding Coffee Co.
And queer.
Yeah.
Your coffee.
They go together.
Yeah. Start your day with game.
Oh,
No,
oh.
I was supposed to prepare coffee
Hold
just
on.
a little bit.
Uh-oh.
I think I figured it out.
Uh-oh.
Because it says that you two have echo.
Is it maybe picking up from two microphones? Because I have my recording mic, one of them plugged into my computer, and I also earbuds doesn't have that microphone, so.
And I think it's coming from our end. Let me. Okay, that's the mic I want from. All right. So hopefully that helped any at all.
Hopefully.
But yeah, we are sponsored by Grinding Coffee Co. And Grinding Coffee Co. is a queer, black-owned coffee company that gets coffee delivered straight to your door, and that's the only thing straight about it. They sponsor marginalized streamers like us all over Twitch and YouTube. And if you use the link in the chat along with promo code NEXTLISTGAMES, you can get 10% off your entire order, and it helps streams like ours continue to do whatever this is, honestly. It's having fun, and that's what it is.
Yes.
You know what else goes together really nicely?
Hmm.
The words Nextless and games as a code, you get 10% off.
My God, you're so right. That's I can't believe I had forgotten that. That was so smooth. But yes, it is. If you use promo code NEXTLISTGAMES along with the link in the chat, you can get 10% off your whole order, and it's exciting and also tasty. In fact, we have a cup of it. Where is it?
Here.
Thank you.
Demonstrate.
It is.
Power to stream.
It is mixed with lactose-free coffee creamer and oat milk. It's very good.
Oh, looks really good.
Yeah, for the benefit of certain parties here.
Yeah.
But it's the Gay Agenda Cold Brew. It is very good. It is currently what's powering me here, along with anxiety.
Yay!
Yeah, so we're going to get started with our PowerPoint Palooza. So we're going to introduce everyone here, your lovely, lovely panelists.
Also, Olivia said that she's trying to comment and is not able to.
No!
Is it vote only on still?
No.
Cecil can comment.
Yeah.
Cecil.
Is it all or only one maybe?
Cecil only allowed to comment.
Cecil only.
Oh, there's still an echo.
Only chat today.
There's still an echo, which is what I was worried about. I don't understand why the audio.
Is it like?
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
picking
Yep,
up,
yep,
nap, nap,
yep, and I just don't know why it's doing that.
We'll never know.
Okay.
We'll never know that they actually live in the shed in my backyard.
All of them?
Yes. All of them.
It's a portal to Area 51.
Yes.
Or a very large shed.
Okay.
The
Oh.
largest. The largest shed.
It's bigger than your actual house.
My next presentation is going to be on how big the shed is.
Oof. All right,
The
Cecil.
shed is like the TARDIS.
Yeah. Big shed.
Cecil, please tell us if the stream is good.
Also, Olivia?
Yes, Olivia's here.
Olivia, where?
Cecil said it
Oh,
sounds
there
good.
we go.
Yay, fixed it.
Yay. Did you fix Olivia's issue?
Olivia?
Is she
Yeah. Yeah, she's in the
speakering?
chat.
She's been summoned.
She's in the chat.
I need to get my... Oh, it's gonna
Alright, so-
log me out of my phone. Oh well.
Let us go.
Introduce.
Yes.
Yeah. So, let's just get started around the table. So I'm just going to go by what I see with my eyes. Ashley, tell us who you are.
I am Ashley Kraft. I am an actor, a writer, and an artist. And today I'm going to be giving a presentation about oil painting techniques and materials.
Ooh.
Gorgeous.
Mm.
Jason, tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Jason. It's also a little warm in here, so I'm gonna take off my... Wow, what's this? More pictures of the man? Oh wow! Oh wow! Look at that! He's all over my person. My name is Jason. Hi.
Fashion icon.
I am the Thesperience himbo, and
Title.
I act. I do some game development stuff. I write. I'm just a group meme. I meme on myself. It's amazing. And I'm also doing a presentation tonight on an analysis on Kazuma Kuwabara's honor code from Yu Hakusho, in case literally everything in my possession doesn't give it away.
Just saying, it would have been incredibly hilarious if your presentation had nothing to do with...
No? Yeah. It's about the
Talk about
shed.
the X-Men.
It was
It's
about the
the
big
shed.
Yeah, I'm doing a presentation on a shed.
Gordon, thank you. Kappa.
Hello, my name is Casper Oliver. I am going to be doing a presentation on Whodunit 101, the basics of the mystery genre. We are specifically going to be talking about the culture of it and more American and European, because that's what we know here in America. So there is a whole other world of mystery stories and stuff that I do not cover. I am sorry.
A-okay.
But I am also an actor and a writer and the Thesperience Thembo?
Yeah.
You get paid the big bucks for that.
Yep.
I
Sponsored
wish.
by Grinding
Those-
Coffee Co.
Yeah, I was gonna say grinding coffee code.
Go! I did make an itch.io recently, so we'll see what happens. And Nessa.
Hi. Hello, I'm Nessa. I'm your darling host. I don't do much of anything. I just break into other people's streams.
So you're a stream rogue.
Yes. A stream vagabond, if you will. And I'm actually going to be presenting on apples, period.
Yes.
Apples, period.
Apples, period. So thank you and welcome everyone, as we're going to go through some very, very fun educational and entertaining presentations. And we're actually going to get started with...
Thank you, Becky, for
Thanks,
the bits.
Becky. Thank you for the bits.
Just realized that they're going to be seeing us do all this. Yes! Jason's our host.
All right, so y'all get the
Yay.
peek behind the scenes. As we're going to get started with
Technically
Jason.
they did last time.
True.
It was I don't know. We're still learning. It's fine. I almost jumped off and gave hosting privileges to somebody else. I was like, actually no. Okay.
Thank you.
Can everybody see it? Is it good? Is it looking good?
Yes, it is glorious. You have the most highest res pictures of Kuwabara that I've seen in my fucking life.
I'm gonna be honest with everyone. Before we even start, a lot of the pictures that you were about to see in this presentation were made by me. And when I say that, they were graphics from my Kuwabara roleplay blog on Tumblr. Hey. So, some graphic skills are here. So,
Good.
hello everybody, and welcome to It's Against My Code, an analysis of Kazuma Kuwabara's honor code. I'm trying to okay, who is this handsome lad? Well, this, my friends, is Kazuma Kuwabara. He's from the anime and manga Yu Hakusho, and is the show's token himbo. He was in my last presentation as one of the various himbos that we're himboing out in the world. He's also the best friend and arch nemesis, quote unquote, of the main character. But that's besides the point. They're queer. It's fine. It's fine. He also has something that he affectionately calls the honor code. And that is what we're going to be analyzing today. Huh? An honor code? Yes. An honor code. Yu Yu Hakusho is a show about making the most of one's life and theoretically using the afterlife as a way of protecting the living. It happens in episode 1. Death happens in episode 1. It's pretty wild. Kuwabara's honor code is one of the core tenets of his character and plays a part in how he reacts and responds to different obstacles throughout the manga and the show. He literally says it out loud. Like, part of my code, not part of my code, he will say it to people just to let them know, okay, so that they're holding him accountable for this. In fact, the series makes it easy to pick apart aspects of this honor code because Kuwabara openly and frequently makes mention of it. Why a code? Well, Kuwabara was modeled after the Bosozoku gangs, which are like the biker gangs, in Japanese youth culture. These gangs rode custom motorcycles, embodied rebellion, but were also the keepers of traditions and codes of conduct to keep their ranks in check as the Bosozoku grew into networks and developed a social hierarchy. So the difference between Kuwabara and the modus operandi of the Bosozoku is evident in the code itself. So you've probably seen characters like this throughout different anime and different manga. So like, you know, just the guys with, they all have pompadours for some reason. So like pompadours, like the long coats, they don't have shirts on, you know, just bandages everywhere. That's the thing. That's like what they have. So it's kind of like modeled after this. So we're going to be breaking down the code. What is Kuwabara's honor code? Throughout the series, Kuwabara himself notes key points of his honor code when encountering something that goes against it. Some points aren't explicitly stated, but are displayed through actions. The points that build what his honor code could be can be linked to existing codes, such as the code of the Bushido, which kind of derives from the original code of it was the Knight's Code of Chivalry, so like the medieval Knight's Code, and the Yakuza Code of Ethics, or Jinji. So what we know. The honor code can be separated into two parts. The code of conduct Kuwabara holds himself to, and the code of conduct he holds for others. These are some of the ones observed throughout the series. The highlighted ones are the points that he verbally acknowledges, while the others are displayed through actions. So we have stand up for your fellow brothers, which is something that he does often. Don't fight women, which there is an entire segment on it. Fight for beliefs, which is literally the entire show. Honor those beliefs in the face of death. Yeah, pretty much. Honor oaths, respect harmony amongst brothers, and cowardice is not an option. So we're going to start with the Jinji. The Jinji, or Yakuza Code of Ethics, is an ethics code bestowed on family members when inducted into, like, you know, the little families. These would be examples of the standards held for others in Kuwabara's company, while he himself abides by these points. These are the tenets that he respects in others and the way in which he expects confidants and close friends to behave. So we're going to compare a little bit about his honor code compared to the Jinji. So follow the Oyaban Koban, which is the father-son dynamic in the Yakuza. So Kuwabara technically is the figurehead in his group of friends at school before he meets the main character and all of the supporting characters later on in the series. So it's the respect for respect kind of, you will watch out for me, I'll stick up for you kind of back and forth. So don't steal from the everyday man or get them involved. Which originates between gangs, stays between gangs kind of things. There are some inner, like, school gang things that kind of go on towards the beginning, and it kind of shows that they kind of keep their stuff to themselves. Don't disrupt the harmony within the family or touch the partner of another member, which is interesting because the main character, Yusuke, has an ongoing relationship with this girl named Keiko. I don't know. They barely talk to each other and they just argue and bicker and like bully each other. I don't know. It's weird. But Kuwabara at one point says like, no, like I'm gonna like they go well together, which I'm like, dude, come on, you're gay for Yusuke, chill out. Never get involved with drugs. Shonen Jump would never include drugs. What are you talking about? Like, come on. Always be chivalrous, and he might be brutish, but he is respectful. Sometimes. It's okay. There's a, it's fine. And then we move to the Code of the Bushido. The Bushido Code and the principles of the samurai is the base of Kuwabara's standards for himself. Within this code are the 8 virtues. They've been adapted slightly for his own code of honor, but these are the pillars of Kuwabara's character and are evident throughout the entire series. The Bushido Code itself can be linked back to the medieval Knights Code of Chivalry, which I think is pretty cool, because Bushido are kind of derive from a knighthood kind of thing, which is pretty neat. So these are the 8 virtues of the Bushido Code of Chivalry. So there's justice, courage, compassion, respect, integrity, honor, loyalty, and self-control. So justice or rectitude. So the power to decide a course of conduct in accordance with reason, without wavering, to die when to die is right, to strike when the answer is to strike. In the Bushido Code of Honor, this is said to be the strongest defining virtue. It's one of those goes without saying types of virtues. So Kuwabara's recklessness is based in the confidence in decisions that align with his morals. If those morals just so happen to coincide with fighting or risky maneuvers, then he'll act without hesitation. Call it instinctual, if you will. Courage. So courage is exercised in the cause of righteousness and rectitude. So it kind of goes hand in hand with justice. Kuwabara's drive to jump in at a moment's notice to fight on behalf of someone. In most cases, it's to escape because he's queer, or to fight to prove value in his beliefs and or the beliefs of the team can be attributed to courage. To know when to fight, when to die, when to act, when not to, knowing and understanding is one thing, but making the switch from that understanding to a physical acknowledgement and action on its behalf is when courage comes into play. Compassion, benevolence, and mercy. Love, forgiveness, affection for others, sympathy, and pity are traits of benevolence, the highest attribute of the human soul. This is one of the traits that comes naturally to him, whether it's for people who are stronger than him, weaker than him, or for those who look to him for protection and safekeeping. So he does this so much. It's like, you can tell. I know a lot of you haven't seen it, but literally, most of the time Kuwabara does something, it's because somebody else needs help, and he cares about them too much to say it. It might be difficult to verbally affirm those feelings, but being able to act on them and allow them to influence his treatment of others for the better will always prove to define the way he engages with others on an interpersonal level, and his ability to see the world from the perspective of another. Respect and politeness. Respect in the Bushido Code is mainly rooted in the respect and consideration of the emotions and feelings of others. Manners may play a small part, which Kuwabara isn't great with, but the consideration of others in order to treat them with the highest form of respect has driven him to make decisions and pursue specific plans of action without judgment. This profound respect is most often, in Kuwabara's case, reserved for those who are close to him. This, in some cases, still extends to those outside his personal circles, even including enemies, which is kinda whack, but also really cool. Integrity, honesty, and sincerity. Within the Bushido Code, this applies to the earning and spending of money, but he's a teenager who he doesn't have any money. Thrifting proves just how far one can go with the resources that they possess. So, in terms of Kuwabara, he focuses on the sincerity that comes mainly from his open devotion to his code of honor. He's sincere in the fact that he won't shy away from admitting that something he's observed or a certain course of action isn't true to the person he wants to be. His integrity follows along the lines of his own personal conviction. Also, these screen caps are from the best episode ever. I'm just saying, it's really great. Please watch it. Honor. A vivid consciousness of personal dignity and worth. Kuwabara, for a majority of the series, bases his worth on how well he follows his own code, including but not limited to his strength, his abilities, and being able to protect those that he cares about. In a way, honor to him is related to conviction, not just his own, but being held accountable by those around him. In order to abide by the principle of honor, you must acknowledge your moral responsibilities. Loyalty. Those he values will find it impossible to dissuade him from standing in their place for battles or speaking up on their behalf. Their happiness and well-being becomes a priority above all else. Their hardships become his hardships. Their struggles become struggles he hopes to lighten. Those that he trusts and puts faith in will receive endless dedication. Those close to him are closer than family. Even without blood, the bond that binds them to that binds him to those he cares for cannot be broken unless their faith and trust in him is brutally severed, which, like, doesn't really happen ever in the show. But, it's Shonen Jump. We love it. Self-control and character. These are my favorite pictures of this man. Those are both the hardest and easiest of the virtues to implement into this honor code. What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. The difference between good and bad and right and wrong are givens, not arguments subject to discussion or justification. And you should know the difference. Character also leads into Kuwabara's insistence that he respects women, therefore he includes it in his honor code. The aspect of self-control is more difficult when he isn't consciously aware of his actions and how his emotions are affecting them. He borderlines breaking his ability to control himself, and he just screams and, runs ahead and does stuff. And it's where he gets into the most trouble. It's far easier to lose control of his tongue than his body. Most of the time, that loss of control is caused by his issues with emotionally fueled anger. It helps in some points, but not always. So, in conclusion, Kazuma Kuwabara was modeled after a cultural movement, the Bosuzoku, involving the preservation of honor and loyalty to a cause. While his character arc originally pegged him as a gangster, the series works to flesh him out as the image of ethics and morality. While they could have done more, and I could go on an entire tangent about this, the fan base, how dare you wrong this man and throw him in a hole while everyone else gets to go on and party. Just put him in a corner and wait for the end. I could go off, but I won't. The first half of the series, does a wonderful job humanizing the traits that make him a modern warrior. Finn. The end.
Hey.
Yay! That was so good. That was so good.
That was so
Thank
good.
you. Please
That was
watch
cool.
Yu Hakusho and give this man
Also,
the respect
Jason,
that he deserves.
didn't you write an essay about this?
I did write an essay about this. And if you would like to read said essay, it's literally the exact same thing that I just read, but, worded differently. It is on Archive of Our Own. Just look up Honor, an analysis of Kazuma Kuwabara's honor code. And it is by
Cool.
Once a Bard / Bossy Luigi. So
Beautiful.
go read it. Give it some kudos.
Yeah.
Because I spent an entire evening researching this and putting together the essay, and then I
And now
adapted
this.
it for visuals.
Yay!
Yay.
Also, if anyone in chat has any questions that they want to ask Jason,
Please ask me about this man.
Yeah, put it in
I know
chat
way
now.
too much about this.
Put it in
man.
chat now.
I have so many theories about him.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
As we wait for questions, Jason, would you mind passing the baton to Ashley?
I sure can do exactly that.
Thank you.
Uh,
Go.
question 1 for Jason is, how much do you love Kuwabara?
I hate him. No, I'm kidding. No, I love him a lot. I think he's a himbo character voiced by Chris Sabat. So Chris Sabat does a really goofy job in the English dub of him, but there's something about that makes him fun.
Yeah.
And I think that the fact that the series kind of had an entire little bit where they kind of put so much energy into building him in such a short span of time, and then they just kind of dropped the ball and gave the main character and all the cool demon characters so much more attention, kind of made me want to give him the attention and the respect that he deserves by going whole hog on his entire story and every sliver of information that's in the series, and it's a problem.
A follow-up question from the same person, Olivia, is
It's Olivia.
how many Kuwabaras do you have?
How many Kuwabaras do I have? Last time I counted, I think it was around 16?
Cool.
But is that enough Kuwabaras?
No, it's not. I mean, some of them are keychains that I have in my car. Some of them you can't wear on your body, like the shirt. a lot of most of the stuff that I have down here is just because I could display it. But I have like, you know, posters in my room. I have a poster from the stage show that came out in 2019. Like artwork, fan art, just a bunch of random stuff. I have too much, but also not enough at the same time. I don't know. It's weird.
It's how it goes.
You can wear anything on your body if you're creative enough.
You know, that's right. Just lay on the floor and have someone dump it all on top of you.
You tape it to yourself.
Tape it.
Yeah.
Tape it to my body and I'll wear it. That's what's gonna go. What's happening?
We have a question from Cecil. Cecil wants to hear one gripe of how Kuwabara was handled.
One gripe. Oh, that's tough to narrow down.
Narrow it down, Jason.
The one gripe that I have is that he is the only, I mean, this is like a gripe, but it's also like interesting for the story, is that he is the only human and mortal amongst the main squad, which is why later on, and I'm trying not to spoil it, but like later on there's a point where the group goes somewhere where Kuwabara can't go because he is a mortal being, and because of that there is an entire arc leading into the end of the series where he just isn't present because he's not allowed to go with them. And I think that is sinful and rude, first of all, because he is canonically the strongest human being in the world, but he's not allowed to go with them because he's just not, because of his genetics, because he's a human being.
Oh no.
And I think that's stupid because he just sits around until everybody comes back. It's dumb. I hate it. It's really stupid.
That really is very sad.
And I also hate how the fan base doesn't like him because he's tall and not skinny and not the pretty boy.
He's pretty
Rude.
to us.
Rude. Absolutely rude.
I mean, you showed us a whole presentation, and like
I did, compared to the sexy androgynous demon, the short angry demon, and the main character demon. So it's like compared to them, it's like the chunky human.
but that's where it's at, though.
Yeah.
I know,
And the
but
chunks.
nobody cares.
Love is stored in the
They
chunks.
just don't have good taste then.
Yeah, I was gonna say no accounting for taste.
Yeah.
No. Like, if you look anywhere, even official merchandising prioritizes, like, one-off background characters over him.
Oh.
So you'll get, like, keychains of, like, somebody's estranged father, and, like, not him. And not Kuwabara. You'll get some, like, random person.
Oh,
Or, like, somebody that was a villain in one arc at the beginning, and not him.
Oh.
The redheaded
practically.
stepchild of Yu Hakusho.
And it...
Any last question?
Yeah. I think we're good.
Yeah, because I could also go off about how terrible Kuwabara's dad is, but that's also another thing.
That'll be the next presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you angry about?
I can't really make an entire presentation because his dad only shows up in the last chapter of the manga.
Two anime dads you're mad at. That's what your presentation
Yeah.
is at.
Oh god, it's just gonna be anime dads that I hate.
Yes.
Yes.
That's it.
A parade.
A parade of
Rank
bastards.
them from most to least hated out of the ones you hate.
A parade of dills.
We'll call it the bastard parade.
Oh,
Dilks, dads I'd like to kill.
there we go.
A parade of dilks.
Ooh.
Ashley!
On that note,
Yeah,
Ashley.
wow.
All right.
Yes.
It is time to learn about some oil painting materials and techniques. I'm going to share my screen first. This is step number 1.
Hey, nice.
Okay, let me know if you can see
Yep.
what you should be seeing. My slideshow.
Ooh.
Okay. good.
Nice.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Today you're going to learn about some oil painting materials and techniques. Welcome to the world of oil painting. Now, I also want to say there is a lot of content in this slideshow, and I'm going to go over it fairly quickly. I'm aware of that. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask at the end. And if I don't know the answer, I will look it up. Because I've just recently got into oil painting and recently started researching it in like the past month or so. So there's much that I do not know. And I also want to give the warning, I will probably mispronounce some things just because there's a lot of fancy words and I don't know what they mean and how they're pronounced. So I'm just warning everyone in advance. If I mess up, I'm sorry, I'm doing my best. All right, let's get started. What is oil paint made out of? Oil paint is made out of small particles of paint pigment suspended in a carrier oil, such as linseed oil or safflower oil. Pigments usually come in powders and then they mix them up with the oil, and that's like how oil paints are technically made, and that's how they were made, back in the day. The exact history as to how oil paints were made is not known. They've been around for a very long time. The first known oil painting is believed to have been created in Asia in as early as the 7th century AD. That is a very long time ago, and they don't really know what was the first oil painting, but that's the first one that they know of, and they don't know who invented it or why someone's like, you know what, I'm gonna take some pigment and mix it with some oil. That sounds like a good idea. By the 12th century in Europe, oil paints were used for decoration of some things. It wasn't until the early 15th century that it became an artistic medium. People started being like, hey, I can put this on the canvas. Oil paint can be used in paint on glass animation, which I think is pretty cool. The basic of that is they put the paint on the glass and they use tools to manipulate it, and that's how they make the things move, by moving the oil paint around, because oil paint takes a long, long time to dry. Oil paint was used in a substantial number of famous paintings from the Renaissance era to modern times. A lot of those artists and stuff back then are referred to as the old masters. It is still used for art paintings, as well as the finishing and protection of wooden buildings, as well as exposed metal structures like bridges and ships and things like that. So, oil paint was not the first type of paint. The first type of paint was, I believe, tempera paint, or if nothing else, tempera paint predates oil paint. Tempera paint, by the way, is made out of eggs. I believe it was made out of the egg yolks, but then sometimes some people would use the entire egg and then mix pigments with it. It's believed that when oil painting first became an art form, the only colors of paint people had to choose from were the same colors which had been available in tempera paints in the same era. Yellow ochre, umber, lead tin yellow, vermilion, kermes, I probably mispronounced that, azurite, ultramarine, verdigris, lamp black, and lead white. And a few of these colors, probably a lot of these colors, but some of these like lead white and vermilion are colors which are common, and yellow ochre as well, are still common in oil paint sets today, which I think is cool. Paint tubes were invented in 1841 by a man named John Guffrand. Prior to that, glass syringes and pig's bladders were used. So then they're like, this is a way better way to transport oil paint. Pigments can be toxic. There's a lot more I could say about how colors and pigments and stuff have been used throughout history and toxic manufacturing processes, but that's for another story. A color called Paris green was involved arsenic to pigment it. This color was invented as an improved shade of the infamous Scheele's green, but both pigments were involved in many poisoning accidents. Scheele's green is infamous for being extremely toxic and also poisoning a great number of people that worked in the factories working with it. So Paris green was invented. It might have been a little bit safer, a little bit less notoriously bad, maybe because they didn't put it on literally everything. Like they used Scheele's green to color clothing and all kinds of things. So Paris green was kind of like that, but it involved arsenic because arsenic, the variety that they used, was green. And they're like, this is a great thing to put in paint. In fact, Napoleon is believed to have died as a result of living in a room that they used, I believe, Paris green or Scheele's green oil paint, or whatever type of paint that they used involved arsenic. And he got stomach cancer, it's believed, because of the humidity making certain types of mold and stuff that caused cancer, I believe, grow on the walls. So that's a little fun fact. His death was attributed to green pigment. Prussian blue was the first modern synthetic pigment. Many white pigments have historically contained lead. Lead white is a good example of this. I believe some lead white paint still includes actual lead in it, Most oil paint pigments are only toxic if you sand them. They're not that toxic as long as you're not eating them or breathing in the dust. Working with the raw pigments could be dangerous, but working with the paint is usually not going to hurt you unless you get it in like an open wound or something. It's not the best thing you get on your skin, but it's also not as toxic as a lot of people think it is, because they do have safety standards and you can get non-toxic oil paints. Cobalt colors also have historically been toxic because cobalt is a toxic heavy metal mineral as far as I understand. There are some oil paints that are non-toxic. They retain the color names associated with the toxic color for simplicity, but they no longer contain those chemicals. So they still may be called, lead white, but it's just a color that looks like that. So from a color standpoint, you know what color to expect, but it doesn't contain the bad stuff anymore. Like obviously, if you get Pear screen paint now, it's not going to have arsenic in it. So let's talk about some oil paint supplies. Oil painting has more supplies than you would probably think that you need to have to get started with it. But it's also easier than you think it would be if you want to get into oil painting. So here's some fun facts about canvases. A brief history of canvases. Canvases in the modern day are usually made from cotton or linen. Sometimes they're also made from PVC, which is polyvinyl chloride. Historically, canvases have been made from hemp, though, which I think is interesting. Paintings used to be made on wood panels. They were actually made on wood panels for a pretty long time. But starting in the 1st century in Italy, canvases began to be used, but only very rarely. It took a while after that before it became popular to use a canvas and not just paint on a wood panel. The word canvas is derived from the 13th century Anglo-French canevas. I'm going to mispronounce all these words that are not English, so I'm apologizing in advance. In the Old French canevas, it's possible both are derivatives from the vulgar Latin canapaceus, which means made of hemp, originating from the Greek. I'm not going to even try to pronounce the Greek word, but the Greek word for canvas, because it was made out of hemp, which I think is interesting. Interesting little connection. More info about canvases. Canvas is different than other thick fabrics like denim. Denim is a twill weave, whereas canvas is a plain weave. There are 2 types of canvas, plain canvas and duck canvas. The threads in plain canvas are looser, while the threads in duck canvas are woven more tightly. Fun fact, the term duck comes from the Dutch word for cloth, which is probably pronounced like duck. I don't know Dutch, so I'm sorry. Canvases are classified by 2 ways in the United States, a graded number system and by weight. Like gauges of metal, the number system runs opposite to the weight, so a number 8 canvas is lighter than a number 2. Because like with metal, the higher the number on the gauge, the thinner it actually is. You would think it'd be the opposite way, but yes, it follows the same scale, which I think is interesting. All right, what the heck is gesso and why does it matter? It is an important primer. Gesso is a type of primer used to prime canvases and other surfaces before applying oil paint to them. Gesso is essential for priming canvases before adding oil paint, although people creating acrylic paintings or other types of paintings also can benefit from applying gesso. I did not know this. I made acrylic paintings for a long time and did not know what gesso was and had definitely never used gesso. But gesso is actually, it gives the oil paint something to stick to, and it also protects the canvas. So it's a good thing to add to any canvas. Marble dust was actually added to gesso a long time ago, like in the time of the old masters and things. They would actually just, buy out marble dust from sculptors and things like that and mix it in with their gesso. And some people still add it to their gesso today. You can actually buy it online, and it's not that expensive even. And then you can mix it in and make it more historically accurate, because I'm sure there's probably some benefit to marble dust being the mineral in it. I believe now it contains gypsum or something like that. I think that's what they put in it now, but it has mineral content. It's a lot like our acrylic paint with extra mineral content though. Artists used to have to make their own gesso because they couldn't just go to Walmart and get some gesso. So it has many benefits though. It protects canvases from the acidity in pigments and oil paint, so the canvas will not break down from the paints over time. This is what I was joking about before the stream. You don't want the oil paint to eat through your canvas, so you protect it with the gesso. It also provides a smoother, less absorbent surface than canvas, which makes paintings come out smoother and require less paint than if you applied the paint to the canvas directly. Oil paint is not the cheapest type of paint in the world, so if you're budget minded, it definitely makes sense to prime your canvas with gesso so you don't have so much paint soaking into the absorbent canvas, which is again cotton or whatever, and you are protecting it at the same time. Generally, artists add 2 to 3 coats of gesso to a canvas, although this varies by artist. It really just depends on if you want more of the toothiness of the canvas or if you want a smoother surface. You could put, more layers on. I usually do about 2, and that seems to be a common number to do. Some people want more texture to their canvas, so they may only put 1 layer. Some canvases come pre-primed, but it's still best to add additional coats of gesso, according to many artists. Because in the factory, it's like, oh, we primed them. They just kind of sprayed over a little bit. It's not the same as, applying it yourself. So it may not be as primed as you would think it would be. So it's still best to add your own. Gesso is water soluble like acrylic paints, and therefore you can mix it with acrylic paints to tint it. They do sell different tints of gesso, but you can take gesso and mix it with, like, if you want to make a light gray background or something to tint it, for maybe a sky color or something like that. Or if you want to add warm tones to the gesso, you can kind of do a little bit of underpainting, which we'll get into soon, by tinting the gesso. Gesso is generally white, but also comes in colors like gray or black. Again, like, you can make your own color, whatever color you want, because it is water soluble and mixes with acrylic paint. Fun facts about paintbrushes. Here's a couple pictures of different types of paintbrushes. There's a lot of different types of paintbrushes, so this is just some of the more common ones. You have the round paintbrush, the flat paintbrush, the bright paintbrush, the filbert, the fan, the angle, the mop, and the rigger. Brushes can be made out of a lot of different materials. Most oil paint brushes are traditionally made from hog hair. Some brushes are made from synthetic fibers, though, and are better for smoother or smaller details. But there are also brushes that have soft, natural bristles, such as goat hair. It really just depends on what kind of texture you're looking for. Angle brushes come in many varieties involving length of hair and the specific angle. So some types are called things such as sword or dagger, which I think is pretty cool. Pretty badass type of paintbrush to have. I'm using my dagger. Look at that. Many paintbrushes have numbered sizes on them, but there's no objective sizing scale. There kind of is, but it's not something, kind of like clothing sizes vary a lot. Paintbrush sizes also do vary a lot by the same number size. These numbers are rather arbitrary and may vary greatly between manufacturer or even different brushes by the same manufacturer. So it's still best to figure out what you like and then, get that brush from that brand or whatever if you're very specific about which type of brush you would like. Some brushes are measured by size, which is measured right above the hair above the ferrule. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right, but if not, I'm sorry. Many other features of brushes, such as thickness of handle or materials involved in shape, hair size, or ferrule size, which can affect how brushes feel. There's a lot of different factors that go into brushes. So again, a lot of artists have a favorite type of brush they have based on those kind of specifications, because those all change the feel and how well the paintbrush works. There's other things like paintbrushes come in short and long handled versions. Oil painting brushes are oftentimes long handled, so you can kind of step back further from the canvas and still be able to paint. But a lot of smaller brushes are short handled, so you can be up close to the canvas doing detailed work. A lot of our acrylic paint brushes tend to be the shorter handled ones. But it really is just a matter of personal preference. Palette knives are not brushes per se, but they can be helpful for putting down thick layers of paint, carving out layers of paint, mixing paint on the palette without risking damaging your brushes, or simply mixing paint in order to keep your brushes clean, as palette knives are much easier to clean than brushes. So a lot of times you'll see an artist mixing paint with a palette knife for that reason, as to not get their brush loaded up with paint when they don't want to get that color on that brush. And then also you're protecting your brush, because the hog hair brushes can be more expensive than like the synthetic brushes. A little thing called solvents. Time to solvent some problems. Had to include one pun in this slideshow. Most people who use oil paint use some type of solvent to thin their paints. Thinning paint is important for following the fat over lean rule of oil painting, which is to say you must build up layers from thin diluted to thick/oilier layers. Otherwise, the paint will not dry properly and may even be hard to apply. It will also crack if it doesn't get to dry properly, so you want to put thinner layers under thicker layers. Kind of like how you could draw with a marker and then color over it with crayon, but you can't do it the other way around. Oil paint cannot be diluted with water like acrylic paint or watercolors can, so you must use solvents in place of water to do the same thinning process. Solvents are also used to clean palettes and brushes. You can also use dish soap to do that, but solvents, you can't use dish soap obviously to thin your paint. Nearly all oil paint solvents are toxic to some degree and should be used with good ventilation. Turpentine, white spirits, and odorless mineral spirits are the most common types of solvents. Odorless mineral spirits are often considered to be the best choice of solvent, as they are safer than turpentine in particular, and they don't have as much smell, and they've removed a lot of the harmful bits of it. All solvents are flammable or combustible, pretty much. So make sure that when you are using them, you take care, especially on dry rags, because the combustible ones can actually cause a rag to spontaneously combust as it heats up, as the paint thinner evaporates off of it. So you want to soak those rags in water so they do not catch your trash can on fire. Fun facts about oil mediums. Oil painting mediums are things that you add to the oil paint for specific effects. Now, linseed oil is the most popular oil painting medium. It slows the drying time and can add a yellow tint to paint once it dries, which those things can be either good or bad depending on what kind of effect you're going for. Slower drying time can benefit because artists have more time to work on a painting without being rushed. Linseed oil actually adds a nice gloss to oil paints, and linseed stand oil is a thicker version of regular linseed oil that can smooth out all appearance of brush strokes. So if you want a really smooth canvas, adding some of the linseed stand oil is a good idea. Linseed stand oil can also be used for glazing, which we'll get into here in a minute. Many oils are also combustible, kind of like how solvents are combustible. Other oils, such as walnut oil, poppy oil, safflower, castor, pine nut oil, soybean oil, or hemp seed oil can also be used, although each has its own features in drying time. Liquid or alkaloid mediums can be added to speed up the drying time. Out of regular oils, something called drying linseed oil usually dries the fastest. So there's different things you can add if you do want your paint to dry faster, if that's an effect you're looking for. Some people also add varnishes to their finished paintings, which can protect the paintings and add glossiness or other effects. Now, oil painting techniques and famous artists who use them. Wet on wet. Here we got Bob Ross. A lot of people historically have used wet on wet, but Bob Ross especially is one of the more well-known people who did that. It's also known as alla prima. It means what it sounds like it means. You complete the base layer and subsequent layers while all layers are still wet, unlike some of the other methods. This allows for better blending in a shorter time from start to finish to complete a painting. You can complete entire paintings in one sitting with this method, whereas other people like oil paint takes a long time to dry, so you might have to put down the first layer and wait a couple weeks even to be able to put another layer on, whereas wet on wet, you can do it all at once. The most common method, this is the most common method that Bob Ross used on his famous show. Monet and Van Gogh used the wet on wet technique as well. Bob Ross learned this technique from a man who also taught painting on TV named William Alexander. Now I hear that Bob Ross was at a restaurant or something in Alaska and then saw this show on TV of a guy that taught painting, kind of like how he ended up teaching painting. And that's how he learned the wet on wet technique, which I think is pretty cool. So you kind of pass that torch along. Impasto. Many of Van Gogh's paintings involve the impasto technique. It's a technique by which you can see thick lines of paint as well as the brush strokes. Now, many times artists will actually mix their paints directly on the canvas this way. Paint takes much longer to dry this way, but it has more texture. Some artists use this on select areas of their canvas rather than the whole thing. Artists can even use a palette knife for some of these strokes. So you can see these nice lines in a lot of Van Gogh's paintings were actually involved by just smearing large bits of paint on the canvas and letting it, dry that way, which I think is cool. And again, you can use it over the entire painting, like Starry Night used it over basically the entire painting. Other paintings, you might use it to accent and add texture to a specific area. Your paint will definitely take a lot longer to dry that way. Scumbling. This is also called dry brush painting. Scumbling is a technique where artists use a rough, stiff brush and a loose hand to apply thin layers of paint. The purpose of this method is to leave some of the background or other layers or underpainting exposed. Generally, scumbling is used over layers of dry paint, but it can be used over wet paint as well. Scumbling can be used to add texture to backgrounds, provide a better gradient for one color to the next, build up highlights, and much more. Joseph Turner used this technique a lot, as did Monet. This is actually painting from Monet, and he used scumbling to get these nice color faded effects. Glazing. Glazing means adding a thin layer of color over an opaque base, meaning the original layers influence the final effect of the upper layers of color. This adds a special glow and luminescence to the final painting. This technique is best described by adding color on top of a black and white photograph. So you still have all those nice shadows and highlights showing through with a thin opaque layer of color on top. This requires more planning in advance as to what you hope to achieve. Vermeer used this method in many of his paintings, and each layer must be very dry before adding the next, so this requires a lot of patience as you let the layers dry. It has a very cool illuminating effect to it. Cesar Russo. I know that I messed up pronouncing that. It's chiaroscuro. That's what it is. Chiaroscuro. Caravaggio, Leonardo da Vinci, Vermeer, and Rembrandt all use this technique. It has a classic Renaissance era painting feeling to it. As you know, this is kind of a look of a lot of Renaissance era paintings, had that kind of darkness with these warm illuminated areas. And this was the chiaroscuro method that they used to do this. It features a subject lit by a single light source and utilizes interplay between light and shadows. The term translates to light dark. Chiaro means bright/clear, and scuro means dark or obscure. This is so closely associated with Caravaggio that it's also called Caravaggism. A similar term is tenebrism, which means dark, mysterious, or gloomy. Underpainting. Underpainting it used to be called dead coloring because the lack of color they considered to be dead. Rembrandt, Rubens, and Vermeer all use this technique. One can underpaint by painting the whole canvas a hue or painting out the light and dark areas, kind of sketching out what you want to do. Not only did it save time and money to pre-plan, but it also allowed for painting effects not otherwise achievable. Grisaille, I probably pronounced that wrong, is a technique where the artist used monochromatic shades such as multiple values of gray. It can be used in underpainting, but it's also a unique style and done right. And we finished in just under 20 minutes. That is your speed run of oil painting materials and techniques. And thank you for watching. And here are the fun sources that I used to gather this information.
Holy smokes, I don't know how you did that in under 20 minutes.
Thank you.
I feel like you took like an entire semester course and just crammed it into 20 minutes.
Honestly, I felt like I was back in college.
Well, thank you.
That was awesome. If anyone has any questions for Ashley, please drop it into the chat now.
I do have a fun fact about chiaroscuro, though.
Ah.
Because we used that style of painting a lot in cinematography.
Oh,
when
that's
learning
cool.
to light. So what we would do is we would take paintings by Caravaggio that we particularly liked, and we would go into like a recording set, like a sound stage, and we would recreate it because Caravaggio was known to have the one light.
Yeah.
So we would have to recreate that same lighting technique with
Cool.
fan lights and scrims and flags and try and get the same effect of lighting by recreating Caravaggio paintings.
That's really cool.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Very fun.
That's a cool fun fact.
And I can't remember because I already automatically forgot all the big words. But the painting type where you would like put the big strokes of paint and they would like stick up and you let them
like
dry.
Van
Like
Gogh.
Van Gogh,
Yeah, the impasto.
Yeah, impasto. Yeah, because I remember because that's what my grandma Marianne uses when she paints trees. She'll have the wood be like paint, but then when she goes to do the leaves, she has all the leaves. So I remember being a kid and like touching my grandma's paintings after they've dried for like 4 weeks, and like gently touching it, and like the few times I would touch it too soon, and you'd get all the little colors on your hands. It's just like so like that page, I was like, that was so good.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you.
Actually, I did want to ask, because you're an artist and you do paintings. Like, have you used oil painting before? And is it something, like, is there something about it that, like, surprised you or really, like, would draw you to it?
I just started oil painting a couple weeks ago, actually. So I've been acrylic painting prior to that, but I just started oil painting. One thing I really like about it is the fact that you can blend colors a lot more. Like acrylic paint, you put it on the canvas, that's pretty much it. I mean, you could do other layers of color or whatever, but it's pretty much it once it goes on the canvas because it dries so quickly. Whereas oil paint, you put down different layers, and the more you mix in a specific area, you can actually bring out, if you put an undercoat of one color, so you have much more blending and much more playing around with light and shadow and different colored undertones and stuff like that. And you have more time also to work on it before it dries. So you can have some very unique effects that are, and also because it has more of a translucence to it because of how much you can mix it with different layers, it's much more interesting from a light and color standpoint than acrylic painting.
Wow, that's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, congratulations on getting
Thank you.
into it. I look forward to seeing some of your work because you are a fantabulous artist. Everyone should follow Ashley on Twitter.
Listen, as someone who's had the privilege of seeing some of Ashley's oil paintings, they're really fucking good. Like,
Thank you.
like, yes, you should follow Ashley on social media. Please.
Thank you.
Just do that favor to yourself,
Yes.
honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So I would like to, I'm trying to remember, how do you pass the host to you guys?
Ooh, if you hover on our image, do to the 3 dots, and
Oh,
then
okay.
and then
Here
there
I
should be
see
like
it. Okay. Yes.
I have to do a lot
Okay.
of Zoom meetings.
Yee.
All right, so now everyone, it is not. No, that's not what we want.
Technical difficulties.
No worries, I can fix this.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
You will.
We're just gonna
We're just gonna
scooch this in.
Hold on a second.
What are you showing to the chat?
I'm trying to show this. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha.
Oh my god.
And we're just gonna hold on. You hush. You hush. Why won't it let me show speaker? Because we're speaker? Is that why?
Yeah, you can't see it.
Well, okay.
That's what I had to deal with. You didn't see me for the entirety of my himbo thing.
Yep.
That's okay.
Well, there you go. Ta-da!
Don't worry, I will channel all my emotiveness into my voice and voice alone. Alright. Okay, here we go. Alright, everyone. Hello, my name is Nessa, and I'm going to be talking to you about apples, specifically by spiraling descent into fruit-scented madness, because this honestly all started with a why are there only 5 types of apples at the grocery store type of thing. And then I fell down a rabbit hole that I can never recover from. But here, let's get started with that journey as I recreate it for you here, with, uh-oh. Yeah, my button doesn't work. There we go. Procreation.
Oh, okay.
So the thing with apples is that when you plant a seed, it's kind of random what you create. Like you can take a seed from a Granny Smith apple and then plant it into the ground, but
why did I go?
Uh-oh.
No.
Cass is now touching my
Stop.
presentation.
Because it's not showing on the whole screen. I am trying to help you here.
No help. Only apples.
There.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Continue talking about apples.
All right, so if you take a seed from a Granny Smith apple and put it into the ground, you're not going to grow a Granny Smith apple tree. You're going to get something that's more a random collection of different types of, I guess you could say, characteristics. So usually what you end up producing if you grow an apple straight from the seed is going to be a crab apple, which are usually tasty. It's primarily used for things like animal feed, or you turn it into like ferment it and make it become hard cider, because the human condition is if you find a foodstuff, you turn it into booze. And so we have that there, but sometimes it'll produce a culinary or an eating apple, something that is actually tasty to eat raw, and you can either cook with it or bake with it or have it that way. So we come to click. How many types of culinary apples are there? So this is actually a question. So actually, Jason, if you could unmute, tell me, how many types of culinary apples do you think there are?
Too many.
Too many? Too many?
Yeah.
You got a number? You got a number in there?
A part of me wants to say, there is no number because they're constantly coming out with new ones.
Okay, so Jason's answer is infinite types of apple.
Infinite apples.
A perpetual asymptote of apple. Okay,
yes.
Excellent. Ashley, do you have a guess?
I'm going to say 53.
53, okay. We got a guess of 59 in the chat is from Aries. So interesting. Here, the answer for how many types of culinary apples are there is 7,500 types of culinary apples. 7,500 types of culinary apples! There are 7,500. You go to the grocery store and you can find 5 types, one of which includes the red delicious apple, which is an ornament in apple form and not even worthy of being eaten. And you are to tell me that there's 7,500 types of culinary apples out there. And I get it. Some of them are just like what has been recorded in history, but that's a lot of apples. And I'm over here eating just plebeians worth of apples. When I I could be eating something like the, let's see here, like the Bardsley Island apple, which has a unique lemon aroma that was discovered because it was on a single tree on an island in Wales, as if it was a mythical being just waiting to be discovered. Or I could have the Carrier Blanc de Hiver, which is a French apple that is unusual. Like, look at that picture. It's a lumpy son of a gun, but it's an excellent reward when tried. Has a high vitamin C content, and it has, it's the choice, the French choice for making tarte tatin, which is one of the most delicious desserts out there. And then Casper keeps touching my presentation.
You are so loud.
I am moved by Ab.
I don't want to stop you. I'm just adjusting volume. Keep going. I'm cheering you on. Go.
Or there's the golden russet apple, which is sugary and very sweet and makes an extraordinary cider that is known as the champagne of cider apples. Or there's even the yellow bellflower, which has a banana flavor. There is an apple out there that tastes like banana. And I'm stuck with trying to choose between a Fuji apple or a Red Delicious because I happen to go down to Walmart. Disgraceful. So why can't I buy this vast collection of delicious apples that would blow my mind? The answer is capitalism. So yeah.
Of course.
About that. So when viewing apple, the fruit, as a product to give consumers, you have companies that want to produce something that is like consistent and something that's not universal. That every Red Delicious apple you get is the same as every other Red Delicious apple that you get. It's the same taste, it's the same texture, it's the same look. It looks very pretty, it looks very nice, and you want to put it in your basket. And also trying to have it always be ripe and always be there. So you can buy your apple, the same apple in February as you can in November, and it's going to be that same level of ripeness. And that apple can be found in every supermarket, whether you're going to Fred Meyer's in Oregon or Publix down in Florida. You're still going to be getting the same variety of apples. And because we are very different climates between Oregon and Florida, but we're still providing the same product, it means that a lot of apples have to be transported from the place where they're more apt to grow to every single store in every single state, if not beyond. So the apple has to be bred to handle that level of travel. So they're bred for stability and endurance and a long shelf life, so they can sit on that shelf looking very pretty and very ripe for longer, so it's more likely to be bought. Also for it to be able to endure being jostled around during transit in order to make sure that it doesn't get bruised or blemished so it looks ugly, or an actual like hygienic concern, which be if the skin is pierced, it may lead to bacteria growth or mold, which will then spread to the rest of the product. So these are things that affects money. And so it's what the focus of these apples being sold in the supermarket is. But this leads to lots of issues. So if we're only ever selling Fuji apples and we're always ever growing Fuji apples, we create a monoculture. We only have this type of apple. And so that means that it isn't getting that strength from that diversity of being able to cross-pollinate or anything like that. So as time goes on, it becomes more susceptible to pests and fungi, which are evolving and which are finding new ways to combat the natural defenses of that plant and that fruit. And in order to then combat those pests and fungi, companies and farmers have to then cover their crops in a larger amounts of fungicides and pesticides, and oftentimes harsher fungicides and pesticides, which then get flown into the water cycle and flown into the rest of the ecosystem and damages it. along with that, it limits options available in stores. So the 7,500 types of culinary apples is now whittled down to a measly like 8 that you will ever see in your life. And you're also getting apples that are more universal in usage. You have an apple that is good to eat, like okay to eat, and it's okay in baking, and it's okay in cider, as opposed to you're getting an apple that is the perfect baking apple or anything like that. So ultimately, the point is that apples that you get in the supermarkets and the apples that you are more likely to see are bred for their size, their looks, and their shelf stability, and they are not bred for their taste or even nutritious value. But my friends, I would not be having this presentation, and I would not be as off my rocker as I am if there wasn't more. It does go deeper. So let me tell you about the intellectual property of apples. So let's say that you can have a company and they can own the intellectual property of a specific breed of apple. So let's say that they paid for a study to be done to look at certain traits of different grown apples and cross-pollinate and kind of like try to get specific characteristics all into one apple. Trying to get one that has like the crispest of this breed along with the color of this breed and just kind of bringing it all together. They then own the produced apple with these new characteristics, and they can then say which farmers are allowed to grow that type of apple. So for instance, there was a recent similar study that was done, and it was funded primarily by a Washington agricultural company. And so they produced an apple that I think they're now calling like the Cosmic Crisp or something like that. And so they are limiting it to only Washington farmers can grow that type of apple. No one else can. And so they can also just like choose specific farms, and only those specific farms can grow that type of apple. But another part of that is that there can be an apple brand different from the actual apple breed. So there's a lot of like legalese and intellectual property laws and stuff like that that make this a bit difficult. But primarily what it comes down to is you can have an apple be marketed as one thing and then have the actual breeds behind it be different. So for instance, this happened with something, the Pink Lady is the name of the apple brand. And so that's what gets sold in stores. You have the Pink Lady, but the actual breed of apple is called the Crips Pink. The Crips Pink became available for anyone in the public to grow. And thus they had what is in essence the Pink Lady. But even though those farmers sold that apple, they couldn't sell it as the Pink Lady because that name is taken by a company and is copyrighted and trademarked, and so they can't sell it as that thing even though it is the same thing. And this can also happen in a reverse way of you can have something that's sold as under a specific name, an apple name, but it's actually different types of apples that all get ripe at different parts of the year. So it creates this illusion that this apple is always ripe and always ready and always available, even though it's actually different types of apples just being sold as the same thing. So yeah, everything's a lie. And so I imagine that you're asking, what am I supposed to do about my inability to get some good goddamn fruit around here? So my recommendations is to shop locally. Shop from local farmers or at farmers markets, where you can get something that hasn't traveled over multiple state lines in order to get to you, and so it doesn't have to be built to endure transport. it is something that can be bred to be tasty and chopped seasonally. It does mean that maybe your favorite apple is only available a couple months out of the year, but you get to enjoy that time with it all the more for it. And I do understand that when you're trying new fruits, that you may not be able to tell if it's ripe or what to look out for. In which case, especially if you're shopping at like a local farmer's market, don't be afraid to ask. Learn a bit more, learn a bit about what you should be looking out for and ask those questions. And be adventurous, try new things. You might like some, you might not like others, but it's a good way to continue finding what is good out there and finding out new things about the world. Another thing that you can do is, if you have the land, if you have the space, you can actually grow your own apple trees. So there are people out there who have made it their life's mission to find these older types of apples that have gone out of popularity and have withered away, and try to reinvigorate them. And so you can buy saplings from there, or the cuttings that you can then put on your own apple tree to grow these old types of apples that you don't see anymore, and kind of bring back those lost types of culinary apples. So you have all that there. And if you want to learn more, here's the resources that I use, but there's a lot of other things out there. But primarily what it comes down to is, to be honest, apples aren't even my favorite fruit. Like, I love a good mango any day of the week. But the fact that this is just apples, that you're going out there, you're going to the market and you're purchasing something that is its worst form of itself, simply because that is what is most likely to be sold, is a sad existence. So learn where your food comes from, find out what's local, find out what's seasonal, and go out there and enjoy the food available. And that is where I stop. So thank you all for joining me on my manic apple adventure.
I love that.
So manic.
As someone who's tried every type of apple they have in the grocery stores, here for it.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I've tried the pink lady apple before, and I heard about the cosmic crisp one, and I'm mad now because it may not be in Florida, so keeping it into one state.
Yeah, we tried an apple recently. It grows for like a very short period of time, but when you cut into it, it actually is pink.
Oh,
like
cool.
It seeps pink from the skin into the meat, into the like the flesh of it, and it tastes like strawberry lemonade.
Oh, cool.
And it's an apple.
It's very
and I swear to God, I never want to buy a grocery store apple again.
Yeah, we also got here. I have demonstration. So this is the Shin Asian pear, which sometimes are sold as like the Chinese apple. And like, I would never see this in any other store in the world, but like they were being sold at the farmer's market, and they're large and tasty and delicious. And so yeah, I definitely support getting out there, finding what's local. Don't trust the agricultural industry. And
Aries has a question.
I'd love to answer a question.
Yay.
I love to answer any and all questions about apples, because to be honest, I had to cull down a lot of what I wanted to talk about because I can go on for days.
Cecil and I have sat and listened to her talk for well over an hour.
About apples.
Valid.
Aries has asked Nessa, what is the gayest apple?
The gayest apple. Let's see here. I do want to say that I do like the one apple that's like the champagne of apples. But I also like the one that apparently tastes like a banana, which I do not understand.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah. It's multiple fruits in one.
It's trans.
Yeah, see?
It's a trans.
It's beautiful.
And what is the best apple for throwing at people that you don't like? The chat earlier had offered the option of a Red Delicious is to be the best apple to throw at someone.
Yeah.
But what would be your professional opinion?
I would also approve of throwing a Red Delicious. Fuckers. You could also do like a good old-fashioned crab apple too.
Small, sturdy. Aries also did have a typo of eating apples with ranch, and your input on apples in ranch was requested.
Here's the thing, because I know that you can like make a nice like fall salad with apple and blue cheese and candied pecans and then put ranch over that, and like that exists, and it's not heinous, but I do dislike the thought of just dipping an apple slice into ranch.
So not a sin,
Not a sin, but I personally will judge you.
Maybe one of those 7,500 varieties tastes good with ranch.
God, here's the thing.
One of them probably tastes like ranch.
Honestly,
because here's the thing. That's just a few examples. There's an entire list on Wikipedia about all the different like they call it like cultivars of apples, of different types of culinary apples. There's some that's like, oh, it tastes like vanilla and orange. And there's one that's like, oh, it's spicy. And I'm like, what do you mean the apple's spicy?
It's like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
That sounds fake, but
Dip the spicy apple in the ranch.
We'll do that next. If I ever find the spicy apple, I will indeed dip it in ranch, just for everyone.
Do it for science.
For science.
Oh yeah, for science.
Oof.
Is there any other apple-y questions?
Any other
Fruit
apple questions?
This man. When I got to the intellectual property of the apple, a lot of the information comes from the article The Launch, which talks about the Cosmic Crisp, and it's just honestly insane because it is very much a commodifying apples to the point where it's like we're thinking of it as a product of like we're using this to go against our rivals in like the fruit gummy industry of like we want this as your choice of snack. How do we make this appeal to people? Appeal, but it just feels like taking all the love and fun that goes into like food as an expression of love and just like really making it just a product to be sold.
Cecil also has a question.
Yeah.
Cecil asks if they are not valid in liking Red Delicious because they were not aware of the fact that people don't like Red Delicious.
Oh. I will say that I will put Cecil on blast and say that they did not understand that good food exists until like the past couple of years. So I would say that I do not trust Cecil's taste nor their preference for Red Delicious apples.
Oh.
It's fine. Eat fruit. Enjoy it. I'm just... For me, the Red Delicious is one of those things that it best represents the whole, like, we have turned this into something that is just going to look pretty and look iconic, and not necessarily that it's very tasty or nutritious or has the best texture.
Like putting gold on food.
Yeah, it's like, so for instance, there is I watched a YouTube video about this farm that sold Suncrest peaches, which is a very distinctive peach that has almost kind of like a little point at the bottom. But it got to a point that stores wouldn't buy their ripe peaches because that little point doesn't do well in transport. That it's likely to get squished and then it doesn't look as good, or it might lead to that like proponent of bacteria and mold and such like that. And so they couldn't sell these peaches. So it got to a point where the boxes that they were putting the peaches in were more valuable than the peaches themselves. And so, yeah, so at one point there was having to make this decision of, do we just uproot all of these trees and just like get rid of this entire stock and this entire breed and type of peaches. And so like a lot of fruit is like that because it doesn't do as well with the more efficiency focused model that is adopted by a lot of stores. I got opinions, but
Good.
I'll have to save them for future presentations because we have our last presentation. Yeah. I'm excited. Do you want this seat or do you like that seat?
I mean, I don't care what seat I'm in. That'd be easier for me to manage my PowerPoint from that seat.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna do a little.
We're gonna do a little shuffle-roo here.
A little switchy switch.
A little switchy switch. The old bait and switch. You thought you were gonna be looking at that side of the screen. Ha! Turns out you were wrong.
There's only one side of the screen that we're looking at.
You're sitting on my coat. Ah! Ow! Sorry. I don't know what's happening, and I'm here. Okay. Hello. I am going to be doing a presentation on, I call it Whodunit 101, the basics of mystery fiction. So you all are going to see some behind the scenes here as I reorganize this. Okay, cool. Let's pull Zoom back up. Hi, Zoom. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. But here's what we're gonna do. Oh wait, I can do this. Haha. There we go. Hooray. And now let me make sure that everything looks okay. I think we are good to go. All right. Yep, that's the best it's gonna be. Whodunit 101, the basics of mystery fiction, a PowerPoint presentation by Casper Oliver. My pronouns are they, them. Hello. Now, I just want to say that mystery as a genre is something that is very important to me. It is something that I have enjoyed consuming for many years, ever since I can remember. One of my first ever musicals was Chicago. One of my first ever TV shows I ever did fan art of was CSI. Yes. But I do want to just kind of make a statement. Fuck the police. ACAB. We will be talking about mystery fiction, the history of it, the tropes of the genre, etc. Our present culture and also our history glorifies police and the criminal justice system, and it's often some propaganda fucking bullshit. Fuck the police. Continuing on, let's talk about the history of the whodunit genre. So we're gonna cover just the kind of some prime years of the genre. It all started, it can really trace back to at least the mystery genre as we know it. Started back in 1844 when Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Murders of Rue Morgue, which is a three-part short story series following the name's French. I cannot. Auguste Dupin. Close enough. And then in 1868, the first murder mystery novel, the first detective novel, was written by Wilkie Collins called The Moonstone. Now we're going to start getting into more familiar territory as far as names go, because in 1887, we've then got the first ever Sherlock Holmes story published. It was published out in England. A Study in Scarlet is the first story that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle ever published. And I'm sure everyone knows this, but I love the fact, and it's also tragic, that he fucking hated writing Sherlock Holmes. He actually tried to kill off Sherlock Holmes so that he didn't have to keep writing it anymore with the Reichenbach Fall. So Moriarty was actually supposed to succeed in killing Sherlock Holmes. And the fan base that he had cultivated, the general public, were so upset that Sherlock Holmes had died, they literally refused to let him die. And so it's like the reverse death of an author, where like they didn't let the author kill him off, so he had to, like, that's why Sherlock Holmes's survival never made sense, because he was supposed to die, but he brought him back his money. And then in 1920, we have The Mysterious Affair at Styles was published by, okay, Agatha Christie. I love Agatha Christie. I have watched a lot of film adaptations of her books. Her book and Then There Were None is a book I have read many, many, many times. It is so good. And she took a lot of inspiration from Sherlock Holmes and everything that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote. And so that's when she began her series. Now, she started to write at the very beginning of what was known as the Golden Age of Mystery, where a few other authors such as Dorothy L. Sayers as well as Agatha Christie became popular. This was between the 1920s and 30s, primarily over in England. So England and the surrounding countries were kind of having their golden age of mystery. It was getting a bit of a boom over here in the United States, but not nearly as flourishing as over there. In 1930, the term whodunit was coined by our book reviewer, Donald Gordon, talking about a book called The Half-Mast Murder. So that was the first ever common usage of the term whodunit, which is just a kind of a smushed together version of the term who did do it. Now, the 1930s and 50s is when the proper polite mystery that it became popularized over in England kind of fell out of style here in the United States, and we pushed more towards a hard-boiled crime and noir fiction. So that really boomed during the 1930s and 40s and 50s, and unsurprisingly, that is during the period of World War II. So it is said that a lot of the way that America handled the trauma that was going through this massive war was actually fed into all of this hard-boiled crime and noir fiction. A little bit more of a fun fact, in 1944, the board game Cluedo was invented, and Cluedo was then translated into Clue here in the United States. So that was like the first murder mystery board game that became really popular. So there is a brief history. Actually, I want to go back super quick because fun fact, at about 1950 something, all like documented history of the mystery genre is super vague. So you would have to go really deep diving into very specific subgenres and very niche like sections of the mystery genre to get further history. So that's why the timeline that I have here is between like the 1840s and the 1950s. Let's carry on. So, common mystery fiction lingo, some good terms for you to know. Again, is going to be whodunit, which is often spelled with one N or sometimes two. It doesn't really matter. Both are completely fine. It is a plot-driven detective story in which the puzzle regarding who committed the crime is the main focus. So, you are following someone trying to solve the crime and figuring out who committed the crime, the who, the how, the why. Gumshoe is another term for detective that you'll often hear, as well as sleuth, someone to be a sleuth or doing sleuthing. They are investigating. The term hard-boiled is relating to or being a detective story featuring a tough and often unsentimental protagonist with a matter-of-fact attitude towards violence. So hard-boiled usually encompasses, actually almost entirely encompasses noir. So it's hard to imagine noir that isn't hard-boiled. So noir with guns and sex and violence and the kind of the raunchy, the thrill of it. A red herring is something that is often used in fiction media, something that is put there to mislead or distract from relevant or important information. So if you're trying to say, you're trying to get people to believe that this other person committed the crime when it was actually, you know, the killer is this person over here, you would use a red herring to lure people in the wrong direction. A locked room is a type of mystery. It is a mystery involving a crime scene which no criminal could apparently have entered or left. So if you go into a room and you see a body and it's like, well, no one has been able to come in and out the whole time, then that would be a locked room mystery. And then the last one is one I almost forgot to put, oddly enough. It is the Femme Fatale, a mysterious and seductive femme character whose charms ensnare lovers and often leads them into danger. We see a lot of offshoots of things like the Them Fatale for like non-binary. I'm not sure if there is a mask version of that. The Homme Fatale. But it's usually just a very sensual character. It doesn't necessarily even need to be sexual, but just a very sensual type of character. Now, we're going to break down into some of the common classes of the mystery genre. First is the fair play whodunit. Second is going to be the clueless mystery. And then third is going to be the reverse whodunit. I was originally going to shove this all onto one slide, but I figured that divvying them up and giving examples would actually be best. So let's take our first look at the fair play whodunit. This here is a photo of one of my favorite ever films that I have watched way too many times, Knives Out. Absolutely fantastic film. And a fair play whodunit is you, the audience, know what the sleuth knows. So you know everything that the detective knows and may be able to solve it before the characters do. So this includes a good handful of stuff. A good handful of the Batman arcs are this way, but not all of them. The film Hot Fuzz with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, that would be considered a fair play whodunit. Knives Out, the show Psych. Psych would be a fair play whodunit for the most part. Most Agatha Christie books are fair play whodunit. And yes, Blue's Clues. I haven't watched Blue's Clues in a very long time, but if I remember correctly, it would be considered a fair play whodunit because you know everything that the host and Blue know. So yes, Blue's Clues is a fair play whodunit. I do also want to point out that Sherlock Holmes books are often considered to be fair play whodunits, but they're not. The fair play whodunit actually became popularized after Sherlock Holmes came out. So Sherlock Holmes was written before the fair play whodunit was really an option in mystery. So it would be more considered the clueless mystery. Ironically enough, the film Clue, based off of the board game Clue, based off of the board game Cluedo, would be considered a clueless mystery, actually more out of necessity. The clueless mystery is the story does not provide enough clues for the audience to solve it on their own. The audience must watch or read the story to the end to know what happened. Now, the reason that Clue, the movie, is a clueless mystery is again out of necessity, considering that when this film was released, it was released with 3 different endings. It was released with, well, I'm not going to spoil any of them, obviously, but there are 3 very different endings playing on the mechanics of the board game. They needed all 3 endings to work, and they needed all of them to make sense. So they had to be vague as the movie went on, as to not exclude themselves from any options. Some other examples of the clueless mystery would be the RDJ, or Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes films. I realize I have a typo there, but whatever. Again, Edgar Allan Poe's stories, those murder mystery stories, as well as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories. These stories are often also the clueless mystery because you are watching through another person's perspective. Like with Sherlock Holmes, you are actually watching through Watson's perspective, and John Watson is not the genius detective, so you often don't know what's going on until Sherlock Holmes reveals it all at the end. Also, most episodes of shows like CSI and Law & Order actually heavily rely on the clueless mystery factor. Episodes often having random twists and constantly canceling out information to keep engagement because they have to keep you coming back after the commercial break. They need you to not change the channel, so they constantly need to have that changing where it's like none of the facts matter. And so they heavily rely on the clueless mystery. Oh, and then the reverse whodunit. The reverse whodunit is when you start with the knowledge of who did it, how, and why. You know how the crime was committed, but the detective doesn't. Or, well, for example, the audience knows the who, how, the why. The tension doesn't come from solving the crime itself, but in how the detective will solve it. So, again, if you've watched Knives Out, you probably would at first think, oh, it is a reverse whodunit. And then, you know, twists and turns. Some other examples of the reverse whodunit would be the series Columbo, which really got detective fiction popularized on television, and then the offshoot, Mrs. Columbo, which followed his wife, and then the show got renamed to Kate Columbo because it wasn't doing as well as Columbo, and then Kate Columbo wasn't doing well either, so they changed the name again to Kate Loves a Mystery, and then the show just never did all that well, and then they canceled it. But some other offshoot shows came from it, so there's a long history with Mrs. Columbo. Early Ace Attorney arcs are this way. It's probably mostly just to get players used to the mechanics of the game. So if you already know who the killer is, you know what you're working towards. Later on, they kind of take those training wheels off. The show Breaking Bad would technically be your reverse whodunit because you are following the criminals, so you know exactly what's happening. You know who's making the drugs. I've never seen Breaking Bad. It's about drugs, right? Okay. And then also NBC's Hannibal with Mads Mikkelsen or whatever his name is, that would be considered a reverse whodunit because technically NBC's Hannibal is a prequel to the show, to the book Red Dragon, which is a prequel to Silence of the Lambs. And in Silence of the Lambs, you know who the killer is. It's Hannibal Lecter. So as you're watching NBC's Hannibal, you know who Hannibal Lecter is. You know he's the killer. So it's more the how will the detective, aka Will Graham, I think, solve it. An honorable mention I'm going to put in is the musical and the movie adaptation, which I do thoroughly enjoy, Chicago. You know all about the murders. You know what happened. It's mostly you following this murder mystery in the sense of not how will the detective solve it, but how are they going to get away with it. I think that's a fun way of looking at it as far as Chicago goes. So these are the 3 common types of mysteries. I am using the wrong mouse. There we go. Now, under all of these 3 categories, there are many, 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 many types of mystery fiction. We're just going to go over the more common subgenres. So most of what you watch and read is going to fall into one of these, but these are not the only types of mysteries that exist. So these are just the most common that you'll see. One that you see very often is going to be the amateur sleuth, a character with no formal connection to law enforcement who regularly solves crimes. So this would be, this is very common in children's cartoons. So like, I think early Nancy Drew would be considered the amateur sleuth. Technically, early Scooby-Doo would also be considered amateur sleuths, but later on in the series, the Scooby-Doo gang and the Mystery Gang all do become official paranormal investigators, so that moves them out of amateur sleuths into another category. We'll get to that later. The next is going to be the cozy mystery. The crime/detection of said crime take place in a small cozy community. This frequently has female investigators or elderly investigators. This was especially popularized by Agatha Christie with her series Murder, She Wrote. Also, it's one of my personal favorites. And then you have the Great Detective. The Great Detective relies on their personal powers of deduction, education, and insight to solve crimes. Sherlock Holmes. That is just straight up Sherlock Holmes. Hard-boiled detective is going to be your tough, cynical dick with a gun and street smarts rather than insightful finesse. That is going to be your noir genre. That would be up your alley. But there is also historical detective fiction, which is just mystery historical fiction. Very, I feel, self-explanatory. Then again, this is where the Mystery Gang ended up. Here is where Scooby-Doo has gotten to, is going to be your paranormal investigations of paranormal activity, often less realistic in nature when you are consuming fictional media. I guess that makes BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural true crime. There you go. And then police procedural. Emphasis on realistic or semi-realistic depictions of modern police investigative procedures. So this would be your Brooklyn Nine-Nine, your Law & Order SVU, your CSI Miami. All of these things would be considered police procedurals. Again, ACAB. Yeah, I forgot about this page. Now, did murder mysteries start in the 1800s or did they start from the Bible? Now, we're going to start with a quote that I heard with my actual ears from an actual priest. The Last Supper was the first murder mystery. An actual priest at a murder mystery show that I performed in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Now, let's take a look at the story of Susanna, a woman who is falsely accused of adultery. Daniel proves Susanna's innocence using detective methods in the Bible. All right. And the story of Bel and the Dragon, in that story, Daniel, same Daniel, exposes the lies of Bel's priest. This case was one of the earliest examples, I guess, of a locked room mystery. Daniel is the biblical sleuth. Thank you, Daniel. Now, getting away from the Bible, we're going to move to my personal recommendations, which is quite far away from that, because I need more folks to appreciate this sort of stuff. So we're going to start with books. Most anything by Agatha Christie, I feel, is a great recommendation for a murder mystery. Also Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That one is mostly because that is a classic. A lot of what we know of the whodunit genre and world stems from Agatha Christie and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Movies, I am definitely going to suggest Knives Out from 2019. Just please understand going into it that it is not your common American comedy. It is far more rooted in the comedic style of drier, more polite detective work of like British shows. So the humor is a lot drier. I know that kind of got a lot of people. Murder on the Orient Express, specifically from 1973, mostly because I haven't seen the new one. So I don't want to recommend it because I haven't seen it yet. Now, Clue from 1985 is also a fantastic film. It stars absolute acting icons. And also, fun fact about the film, even though it is such a cult classic now, when it first came out, it was very poorly received. It barely made back its production worth in the box office. Because of this, VHS copies of Clue became so dirt cheap to video rental stores that video rental stores always had like a surplus of the film Clue. And so it became very easy for people to get access to, like poorer communities and people who relied on these would always have access to this film. And so it became popularized through these video rental services and not the film itself, which I just think is really fascinating considering it's one of the most popular murder mystery films like today. I'm also going to list The Great Mouse Detective. It is a Disney anthropomorphic retelling of Sherlock Holmes, and I think it's just a really great show of how you can make a children's murder mystery content. And it's not really a murder mystery, but it is very good. And so I think it's a great representation of like children's mystery media. Anime, I know I just said, hey, I haven't seen it, I don't want to recommend it. I haven't seen all of Bakuno. I have seen half of Bakuno. Thank you, Jason. And it's so fucking good. It fits the vibe. It's got great acting. The characters are amazing. The mysteries are great. It's wonderful. And made by the same people is a series called Durarara, which is a series I have seen the entirety of. Also very good. It has a lot of mysteries, a lot of, supernatural elements and crime and all that. It's great. Video games. I love me some video games. Always love me playing a sleuth. I'm gonna recommend The Sinking City. I know it has mixed reviews on Steam. I don't care. It's been a lot of fun. I've been watching people play. Jason and I played a little bit together. It is a mystery game, but it is based in like eldritch Lovecraftian horror, so it is really neat. Also, with that said, I've said his name, so I feel the need to say H.P. Lovecraft was a terrible person. Fuck that guy. We're also going to look at Later Alligator, totally different vibe. This kind of plays back into why I suggested The Great Mouse Detective, because Later Alligator has a lot of great showings of common mystery tropes, but it is very consumer friendly for like content. It's very cutesy, it's very fun, the animation's great, they have Yakuza references, like it's wonderful. Speaking of Yakuza, another game that I'm going to recommend is Judgment. Judgment is like a spiritual successor to Yakuza. I'm pretty sure it's made by the same like horror group. Yeah.
I guess it's more spin-off than successor.
Okay.
Yeah, same setting.
Yeah, so Judgment is very similar to the Yakuza series, and it's very good. Also, Contradiction. Contradiction is one of those games where they like went and filmed footage of the actors, and so like all of the cutscenes are all acted out by like filmed actors. It's very kooky, it's very point and click. The main actor who plays the detective is acting like he's trying to be a doctor from Doctor Who, but not quite. It's very fun. I highly recommend playing Contradiction. Again, they play with a lot of really good tropes of the mystery genre. And then lastly are going to be stage plays and musicals, act of the imagination. Yes, I am biased because I played the victim in this show once. I'm being upfront. I am being biased because I was in this production, but it is a very good show. It is very dry. Again, it is very British. But if you like stage plays and you like a good murder mystery, I suggest an act of the imagination. It kind of has an ending that not everyone is too terribly pleased with, but I figure that it's a fun play. And then also Chicago. The film version is wonderful. I've sadly never gotten to see it live yet, but it's very good. Again, it's not necessarily a murder mystery, but it is a fun show about murder and law, and it's just fun. And then here are my sources. I am a murder mystery performer. I have performed murder mystery parties for over 2 years. I've also directed them and cast them and all that. And then all of these other sites. If you want to learn more about the mystery genre, if you want to find good suggestions and all that jazz, that's not a Chicago reference. I don't know what you're talking about. I highly suggest you check out the website Novel Suspects. I got a lot of my information from there. I use so many articles. I literally only listed 2 of them. I went through so many of their articles. Also, TV Tropes, if you're looking for a great way to find new mystery content and like the kind of stuff that you do like, I would suggest using TV Tropes to figure that out. Cited. Dude, trust me. I know what I'm doing. So thank you all so much for listening to me talk about the mystery genre for 20-something minutes.
Awesome. I enjoyed that very much. And ironically, I'm rereading The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Just started that about a week ago, and I was like, I know that.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, so.
Yeah.
So good. If anyone has detective questions,
I'm here to answer.
Oh, I have a question. Who done it?
Now that I can't tell you because that would ruin the surprise.
Oh, never
Was
mind.
it the butler?
I don't know. I mean, it's always the
is it you?
I just got here.
I'm not going to say.
No. My favorite is when I die as the victim, right? Come back. They know I'm the same person, but I'm dressed as the detective, right? And then they're like, what? It's like, okay, so what do you know? Who did it? And it's like, you just watched me walk in that door. You are the first person I've talked to. Narratively speaking, I feel like there's some flaw in this logic. What do you know is the good question. Like, but yeah, thank you, because that was very exciting to talk about.
Yeah, that was so good. I also like that you mentioned like the cozy mystery. It's like, oh, it's in a nice small community. Doesn't that also include Hot Fuzz?
Yeah.
No.
Kind of.
No?
Hot Fuzz is too gory.
But
Hot
it's
Fuzz is way too gory.
But it's in a small,
No,
tight
it's using
Cozy noir.
it's a parody.
Cozy noir.
It's a parody of a cozy
Cozy
mystery.
horror.
It's because a cozy horror doesn't have blood and sex and violence and that sort of
And
shit.
geese.
Or it's the geese. The
It's the
geese
geese.
are what really nail in the coffin for that one.
Where's the ice cream?
Yeah, that too.
We do
Ice
have,
cream and geese.
do have a question. What are your top 5 detectives?
Okay. So top 5 detectives.
Top 5.
I know. So, I'm gonna start by saying that I do fucking love Knives Out. Detective Blanc. Benoit Blanc is such a fun character, even though the accent is...
I was gonna say.
Kentucky Fried Froghorn, Leghorn bullshit. It's so there, he even made fun of it himself on an SNL skit. Like, I definitely suggest looking up the Knives Out casting SNL skit. It's so funny. Just be careful. They do show fake stage vomiting, so if that's like a thing, don't watch that skit. But yes, Benoit Blanc, I want to emulate those vibes. So fun. Listen, he's a problematic fave. I love Goro Akechi. I have a tattoo on my arm. It's not of his face or anything, dear God.
It's him. They're like,
Just like a photorealistic.
Oh God, no.
It's him. It's him next to a photorealistic stack of pancakes.
Oh my God. No.
That's it.
I love him because I get him on a trauma level, and I just always love the whole like, oh, gotta play sweet and pleasant, and I am delightful, and everyone loves me. But like having all of that baggage that you're working through, Akechi did a piss poor job with that, if you ask me.
Was he a good detective?
No, considering that he caused most of the crimes that he solved.
But then he knew who did the crime.
Objectively speaking, like, listen, Akechi,
Cheating.
Goro Akechi is an incredibly intelligent character. He is a very smart guy. He is very intelligent, but he causes most of the crimes that he solves. So, like,
right, so that's two.
Okay, that's two. I will have to say, I could cheat and say Sherlock Holmes and be done.
But which flavor?
Right, exactly. So I always have to give a nod to Jeremy Brett in the Granada BBC Sherlock Holmes specifically. He played Sherlock Holmes throughout I think it was the 80s and the early 90s, because he died in 95. He very, very charming, very handsome. And this was past his like he wasn't in his prime anymore, because that was more when he was doing musicals like My Fair Lady. He was very young, but when he was doing Sherlock Holmes, he was like already in his like 50s or 60s and like a fine wine. So just also, it is great to see this Victorian dressed man get into the worst choreographed fist fights. But you also do get to see him beat a man with a cane because he was beating his wife. It's great. We love justice. So Granada Sherlock Holmes, played by Jeremy Brett, would be another one.
Brett's granola, yes.
Brett. No. Okay, who else? Everyone else that's coming to mind are just only coming to mind because they are iconic and not because... Okay, I will say, I do love what Nancy Drew did for girls getting into mystery. Nancy Drew was originally written by a guy, I can't remember his name, who wanted to have a female counterpart to the mysteries that he was writing with a male protagonist. So he wrote it under a pseudonym of a woman's name. Well, Nancy Drew then started to become ghostwritten by a lot of writers who would all write under the same pseudonym. So you get all of these Nancy Drew stories throughout the years just written by all of these different people. And she changes. Like, at first it started as a more cozy mystery, and then it started to get darker, and it started to get more adult, and it started to have themes like romance and like personal drama and like all of this stuff. And
she almost died in some of them.
Yeah, but it really brought like girls and women back into mystery, especially because like Agatha Christie did have like, you know, Murder, She Wrote with Jessica Fletcher, but that was more written towards like adult women, while Nancy Drew was much more aimed to people who were just getting into reading. And so there's a lot of Barbie mystery, but I'm not going to mention that because that kind of goes into the same things that I like about Nancy Drew. Okay, Basil of Baker Street from The Great Mouse Detective. Listen, that mouse, I didn't know what gender envy was at the time, but looking back, that was gender envy for an animated mouse, okay? I'm not ashamed. Those are my top. Those are 5. Please stop me, because I will keep going.
Top.
Yeah.
Amazing. But I'm just gonna put out there that Naoto from Persona 4 is a better detective than Goro Akechi.
Fuck Goro Akechi. Naoto is here.
Yeah, Dick Gumshoe's also crying in a corner.
Oh, fuck, I forgot about Phoenix Wright.
Wow.
Oh. Would Phoenix count as a detective on the
No.
chance of
No.
It's not a detective.
No, he's a lawyer.
I feel like they force him to be a detective, though.
That's
I
true.
also think that you'd really like the detective from Dual Destinies, but I can't talk about it because you haven't played it.
We need to play it. See, now I just need to do another PowerPoint of fictional detective, which is what I was originally going to do, but it felt like propaganda. So I did this instead.
Get all the private dicks. Like, not the cop ones.
Fun fact, if I remember correctly, the term private eye, which stemmed private detective, which stemmed private dick, private eye was actually started, if I remember correctly, based off of old Pinkertons shit. Because like the Pinkertons would write mystery stories based off of their investigations, and it kind of led to the term private eye because the Pinkertons were always watching. And then it led to private investigator, private eye, so
there's also a vote for Zenigata for detective.
Zenigata's good. Stupid as ass, but he's great.
Is that the Lupin?
It's the Lupin the third guy. He's pretty good. Sherlock Holmes is a himbo detective.
Oh yeah. Also, I do love whatever the fuck his name was from Contradiction.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, he's funny.
Jenks, Detective Jenks.
Detective Jenks.
He's
so it's an FMV game.
Ashley, you need to watch a I'll send you one because you are going to
need to watch it. It's really good.
Ashley, it's right up your alley.
What is it?
It's called Contradiction. It's
the Let's Play we always watch.
Is Jesse Cox.
Cool.
Yeah, so that one's really good.
It is a time because I think they also point out that Jenks is the most like cartoony acting,
he really is.
But everyone else is like
everyone
British,
else is serious,
just subtle.
Yeah, everyone else is like treating it like a film while he's treating it like a cartoon.
Except for one other guy.
Except for one other guy who it's like, of course it's this guy.
Good.
You know him when you see him, and you're like, yeah. Also, we gotta also just mention the fact that the question.
From Justice League?
Specifically the Justice League Unlimited cartoons.
Specifically on account of I showed all the episodes he's in to Cass, and that's all Cass has seen of the Justice League.
Are we also not going to mention Yagami?
Oh!
And I do love Yagami.
Oh, Jason, I thought...
Yeah, I know. Not that one. The good one.
I thought we were about to have a fight, because I was just like,
no,
you dare!
No.
Listen, he goes from amateur sleuth to serial killer real quick.
The judgment.
Okay, he's amazing. He's amazing. God.
I love him and his partner. Wink.
Yeah, he is.
Also, the Scooby Gang, the OG.
Classic.
I still say they're a polyamorous. They're a polycule solving mysteries with their dog.
But what flavor of the Scooby Gang?
Okay, so I grew up on the cartoons and the animated films. I did genuinely like the live action as a kid. I hated Scrappy, but that's Scrappy.
Yeah.
But I really liked the live action. I know there was cartoons that came out like later, and I'm trying to remember when I stopped watching them. But, like, I have yet to consume Scooby-Doo media I don't like. I'm gonna be upfront and honest. I think it's pretty solid, usually.
Yeah, I remember the Scooby-Doo, like, movies that were back in the, like, 2000s, 2010s.
Yep.
The ones with, like, the Hex Sisters or the ones
yeah.
on Zombie Island.
Those were good, yeah.
Those were.
That's my jam. That's my Scooby Jam.
It's Scooby Jam.
Scooby Jam.
Well...
Cyber Chase is also really good.
Yes.
Oh man, I haven't thought about Cyber Chase in a
That was good.
Yeah.
Ooh. Carmen Sandiego. We watched the new Netflix cartoon a while back, and it was good.
It's cute.
It's cute. I would, if you have Netflix, I suggest Carmen Sandiego. That's really fun. Also, this is just a personal note. If you have any suggestions for mystery detective games on Itch.io, any murder mystery or detective-based fiction that you suggest I watch, or any true crime, I can't speak.
Zero Escape.
Zero Escape. Okay, so
I got one too.
Yeah.
I got one too.
All three Zero Escapes.
Judgment. should play.
I do need to finish playing Judgment. I do need to finish it.
Judgment.
Well, if anyone else would like to tag me in something on Twitter and like give me your suggestions,
At Casper all over.
VO. Oh. So yeah, that's it. Thank you everyone so much for coming and hanging out. Olivia is hyped now.
Is it because I said Zero Escape?
Yep.
Yes.
Called it.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you everyone here for joining us in chat, and thank you to my fellow panelists here who all put together such incredible presentations. Like honestly, I am surrounded by the most intelligent, creative people here, and
Yourself included.
So am I.
Great. So thank you all
Wow,
for
that was
joining.
the most ominous laugh I've ever heard.
Thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you, Grinding Coffee Co. for sponsoring us. Use Nextless Games in order to get money off coffee. Yes.
Money off coffee. Yes.
If you want to see some of the lovely faces here again, tune in on Mondays at time.
Yeah.
At 5 p.m. Yeah, at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
We usually run for about 4 hours.
Fun D&D.
Yeah, and the current arc that we're doing is actually based on the game I mentioned, The Sinking City.
Yeah.
Yeah, slurp slurp.
Yeah. And then just follow Ashley on like every single thing they're on.
Yeah.
Just
Honestly, yeah.
Thank you.
they're very good at everything they do. So like if you see their name, Ashley Craft, just go for it.
Just follow. Don't even think. Just follow.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully we get to do this again at some point. It probably won't be for a couple months or so because holidays and we got things to do. But still, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you everyone who joined me here as panelists. Y'all are amazing and have a very good night.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.